In today's video, I'm going to share some techniques in order to get your offer accepted in today's market, and we're going to get started right now. My name is David Matney with Nebraska Realty. I'm a local realtor here in Omaha, Nebraska. Now let's jump in today's topic. Now, in order to get your offer accepted in today's market, you want to be flexible, okay? And then you want to make sure that you got to understand what's important to the seller. So you want to make sure that your agent is asking the listing agent, hey, what's important to the seller? Maybe it's a quick close date. Maybe it is a seller lease back. You want to be able to accommodate the seller and find out what's important to the seller. And you want to make sure you ask that question because that can make the difference getting your offer across the finish line. Okay, now this technique involves your budget. Let's say your maximum is $250. In order to get your offer across the finish line in today's market, that means you got to look at homes that are priced $225, $230 in order to bid up to $250. So you want to make sure that you adjust your budget to make sure that you give yourself room in order to offer above list price. Okay, now this next technique is going to involve some risk, but that is to make your earnest deposit non-refundable. There's a risk involved with that because what it says is, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if something goes sideways, then you automatically get this earnest deposit. That's going to show that you're serious about your offer. And it may give you just a little bit of leverage in order to do a home inspection. Because what you're saying to that seller is, hey, I want to do the home inspection, but for if any reason we back out, then you just got an earnest deposit check for, let's say, $5,000. So there is a risk associated with that, but it may give you just a little bit of leverage in order to ask for a home inspection. Because here's the thing. The other thing you can do is you can waive that home inspection, but there's a risk associated with that. And if it's an older home and an older furnace, then you may have to budget for those big ticket items. And then here's another thing that you can do in order to protect yourself if you decide to waive that home inspection. And that is, you could buy a home warranty for yourself. Don't ask the seller to pay for it, but to say to the seller, hey, I want to buy a home warranty along with it and I will pay for it. That'll give you some protection. And then here's another option in terms of home inspection. You can, close on the house, then do a home inspection. That way, you at least know what is wrong with the property and what you need to budget for down the line. And then there's another benefit that goes along with that. And many buyers don't understand the value in this. And that is when you do a home inspection and that home inspector goes out and does the walkthrough with you. Sure, they're pointing out all the deficiencies, but they're also educating you on the operation of the house. If you decide to waive the home inspection, then maybe think about doing one after closing in order to protect yourself. Now, let's say you decide to do the home inspection, but then you can also say to the seller, hey, seller, I want to do the home inspection, but it's going to be for informational purposes only, and I'm not going to ask for any repairs. Now, you may ask that in the offer, but that doesn't mean that, hey, something could still come up. So sometimes the seller, if you do ask for that home inspection, they're afraid of you moving the goalposts on that, and that after the home inspection is done, then, hey, we're going to want this repaired, okay? And then the other thing you can do is when you write that home inspection is say, hey, it is for informational purposes only, but I still want the ability to walk away if something major is found. Now, if you tie that in with a non-refundable earnest deposit, there's good and bad with that, but there's significant risk. And you got to be willing to say to that seller, hey, seller, here's, $5,000 if the home inspection goes sideways, or I decide to back out of that deal. So there's a risk associated with each. So you want to really make sure that you sit down with your agent and really discuss all the pros and cons of waiving the home inspection and with making a non-refundable earnest deposit. Okay, now the best type of buyer would obviously be a cash buyer with proof of funds. Now, if you're going to be a conventional buyer, and let's say you just don't have a whole lot of money laying around, what you could do is say, let's say you was going to come in with a 20% down payment, but you don't have a whole lot of funds for other things besides that. What you could do is, instead of going in with 20% down, you could hold some of those funds back to cover any appraisal gap. That gives you the ability to say to the seller, hey, I'm coming in with 10% down payment, but if the home doesn't appraise, I'm willing to pay $10,000 or $20,000 over the appraised amount. Then that goes back to FHA and VA. The reason why those types of offers are not as strong as cash or conventional is because VA and FHA require the home to appraise at or above purchase price. Let's say you're a VA buyer and you say, you know what, I'm willing to waive that appraisal. Well, the VA says you may be willing to waive it, but they still give you that option of walking away if that home doesn't appraise out. So the VA overall governs that. And then the other thing that goes along with FHA and VA appraisals, they're going to do a little mini inspection of the property. So if there's peeling paint, or if there's missing handrails, or concrete that is cracked that presents a tripping hazard, then they can have the seller, make those repairs. And there's a few more costs associated for a seller with accepting a VA and an FHA offer. Not much, but again, if you're in a multiple offer situation and one offer is FHA and one offer is conventional, then the offer that is conventional is going to win out. Now, if you're FHA or VA, one thing you might want to do is, hey, talk to your lender and then find out, hey, is there any way I can go conventional? Okay, because maybe you could. Okay, you got to look at all the options and pros and cons with that. And then the other thing you want to do in terms of a lender, now I've said this on many videos before too, and that is make sure you're using a local reputable lender. Don't use an online lender. I mean, that's just running east looking for a sunset. Use a local reputable lender. And then if they can run you through underwriting up front, that just makes your offer that much stronger. Okay, the time to shop for lenders is over. You got to shop for your lender before you submit that offer. After you make an offer, you can't go around shopping for lenders. You want to make sure that you've solidified that choice at that point. And then you want to have them reach out to that listing agent. And then that way they can also talk to that listing agent and say, hey, we ran them through underwriting. They're solid. They're good to go. We verified everything. So that's just something you want to take into account. Okay, here's another technique, and that is you can offer to pay some of the seller's closing costs. Now, it used to be back in the day that the buyer would ask the seller to pay some of their closing costs. Well, you can do just the opposite. Obviously, you have to have those funds in order to do that, but that may mean more net to that seller. And you want to make sure that it's crystal clear that that's what you're offering, because a lot of sellers may not realize that that's what you're actually offering. They may think it's a buyer concession. So you want to make sure that you spell that out in the contract and make sure that a listing agent understands that. And then here's the thing in terms of price. And then a lot of times what a buyer will want to know is, well, what should I offer? Here's what I tell my buyers, and that is offer an amount. Come in with your highest and best. Leave nothing off the table. Assume if it's a hot house and it just hit the market, assume you're going to be competing. Offer an amount that if it's sold for $1 more, you're perfectly fine with not getting the house. Because a lot of times some buyers will be like, well, let's say they're going to offer $300,000 and then it sells for $305,000. Well, I would have paid that for it. Well, then offer $305,000. Now, here's the other thing too. The other thing you can do is do an escalation clause. And the way an escalation clause works is this. Let's say the price of the house is $300,000 and you say, hey, I'm going to give you $320,000, but I'm willing to pay $500 or $1,000 more than any other offer up to $350,000. Okay, now here's the mistake that a lot of folks make with escalation clauses, and that is you got to make that difference. Don't make the difference $250. Make it $3,000 more than the competing offer. Because if you have two offers side by side and the only difference is $250, that may not be enough to tip the scales. Okay, so what you got to do is come in and say, hey, I'm willing to pay $3,000 more than any other competing offer up to a certain amount. So you want to make sure that difference is substantial in order to move your offer to the head of the pack. But again, I go back to the belief of when you do that escalation clause and you give I'm willing to top out at $350. In a way, you're kind of giving away your top dollar already. There's good and bad with escalation clauses and things like that, but you got to do what's right for you. But again, just keep that in mind. Now, here's another option that many folks don't consider, and that is going the route of new construction. Okay, when there's such limited inventory and you have to waive appraisals, you have to cover the appraisal gap, you have to waive inspections, and all of these other things in order to get the house, at some point, well, why don't you just go buy a new house? Okay, because sometimes what'll happen is you'll have existing get bid up so much that, hey, wait a minute, maybe we should just go buy a new home. So a lot of buyers forget about new construction. There's different things you can do. Everybody's concerned about interest rates rising, and I get it, but you can do an extended rate lock. And then sometimes here's the other thing that happens. Some of these builders have homes that are under contract, and then something happens to where it comes back on the market. So if you have an agent that has relationships with folks, that maybe they will know some of these opportunities that are available. So you just want to keep all your options open when you're submitting that offer. Hey, don't forget, show some love for the channel and go ahead and ring that bell for notifications. I do post videos to my channel each week. And hey, be sure to check out this video next, and you make it a great day.